There's only one way to do the draft in fantasy football, and this is it. And if you disagree, you're wrong. Boys, let's switch it up. Let's talk about the stuff that really matters, not the fake stuff that happens on the football field. Let's talk about the real stuff, and I'm talking about fantasy football. We're coming up, nearing in on fantasy football season. We're talking about some rule changes in our leagues, talking about some rule changes going on. And the biggest debate that's happening every single year in one of my leagues, and it's happening in the league that we're all three in here, is what kind of draft that we're doing. Now, we're talking about a redraft league. We're not talking about a dynasty league. Dynasty leagues, obviously, it's pretty easy how you go about it. But in a redraft league, the question always comes up: do you do a snake draft? Do you do an auction draft? And Jansen, you've been pushing the auction draft for years and years and years. I'm a snake draft loyalist just because I love the chaos of it. So tell me, make your argument, prove me wrong, you moron, about why an auction draft makes sense. Why are you complicating this perfectly sound system that the NFL uses? We don't have an auction to select NFL players. Why do we need an auction in fantasy football? It's on you. Tell me now.
Well, Bubba, let's take one step back and understand what fantasy football is. It's all about bragging rights for a group of friends. And that group of friends is the key part, which means that you've got to keep people engaged. You got to keep them at the table. You got to keep them having fun. You got to have them keep them talking. And there's no better way to do that than with an auction draft. And I'll tell you why. The thing about a snake draft is that you're really at the mercy of other people. It's a little bit like at the blackjack table, and you're sitting there at the head. You've got the person at the end that keeps taking the dealer's card. You never know what's really going to happen. And you can plan that draft the best you can, but someone can throw a wild card out there and mess your whole draft up, and then you get stuck with a bunch of players that you really don't like, you really didn't want, you really didn't plan for. And guess what? That translates over into the season. Here's the beautiful thing about an auction draft. If you're a Vikings fan, which everyone should be, and you want Justin Jefferson, you can get him. You may overpay for him. You may spend half your budget on it. You may wreck the rest of your team to own him, but you can have the person that keeps you engaged. You can have the person that keeps you excited. And when the players and the team stay engaged for the whole season, everyone wins. Because yes, it is about holding up that trophy at the end of the season, but what it's really more about is every week the text thread going crazy and the trash talking that happens in between. And you need all 10 or 12 teams to be doing that, not just one or two teams. And I just have seen it too many times. The snake draft leaves people disengaged and disenfranchised with their teams because so much of those results are truly out of their control. That first round's about the only thing that really pops. That first round's about the only thing that no matter what spot you're in, you can truly prepare for. It's just pure luck of the draw past that point. Tell me otherwise. It's about that
Well,
engagement. Tell them, G.
before we go there, educate me and our loyal fans on exactly how does an auction draft work.
Sure. Yeah, great question. So just to set context, snake draft is what you see where really traditional like the NFL draft, where you're in a slotted number. The only thing a snake does is it reverses it every other round. So if you're the 12th pick in the first round, you're the 13th pick, which is the first pick of the second round. That's a snake draft. The auction is a completely different ball game. You still have that order of teams that are up and they're putting a player on the auction block. So if I'm the first pick, what that really means is who do I want to put on the auction first? And I start that bid for Justin Jefferson at $1, and all 12 teams have a starting amount, usually around $300 that you start with, can bid as little or as much as they want that player. ESPN does a great job of automating this process. But if you want to have a little bit more fun, we come in person for my other league. We come together. We have auction panels and we do it live and in person. And it's just like an auction for art, just like an auction for a vintage car. You are throwing up that paddle and you are driving up the price. And guess what? There are games being played. I know you really want him, and I think you'll spend 50 instead of 40. So I'm going to go ahead and move this up to 45. But what happens if I get stuck and misengaged, and all of a sudden now I've spent, 15% on my budget on a player that I was just trying to drive up for you? And that happens more than you realize. And it's quite funny when it does. So there's the mental games that go into it. But at the end of the day, what we always say is that you have more control of your roster because you know what your thresholds are. And if you really, really want someone, you may bid them up to $75. You may bid up 50%, but it is truly an auction like any other auction would be. You have a chance to buy any player that comes up there. And really the parameters are the limitations of how many dollars you have.
It's the elite way of playing fantasy football. I mean, listen, guys, I'm just a simple guy. I'm just a simple man from Alabama. I don't know anything about these vintage car auctions and fine art auctions that you're playing about. I mean, I don't understand this fantasy football auction that you're trying to do here. Let's keep it simple and let's just pick a player. And then the next guy picks a player. And then at the end, it's only fair that the guy that picked at the end of the round gets to pick at the first of the round. And you talk about, well, this is much more fun because I can get the player you want. Well, you know what? Maybe somebody else wants that player, which is why they take them in that position in the snake draft. What's really a lot more fun about it in the snake draft is you're right, there's strategy, but also there's panic and there's chaos. And I love it because you get those quarterback runs to where if you're on the back end, if you're picking one, you pick somebody good, and then all of a sudden all the quarterbacks go, you've gone from having a top 5 quarterback or a top 3 quarterback to like the 8th quarterback. And then you've got some real decisions to make. You got people that make mistakes. You got the old, and this is an older reference, but still one of my favorites. You got the guy that picks Adrian Peterson that played for the Chicago Bears instead of Adrian Peterson that played for the Minnesota Vikings. That's an old, like 2014 reference right there. You got people who are picking a guy that you're just like crazy, cannot believe has gone in the first round, and you're taking advantage of it because it keeps going. People picking their favorite Alabama players because roll tide, baby, because they want Tua or they want somebody like that. I would say Jalen, but we all know he was built by Oklahoma. They want their Alabama players on their team, and so you get to exploit it and get a much better quarterback or a much better player because they're picking their favorites as opposed to the auction. The snake is the fairest way. It's the most chaotic way, and quite frankly, it's the simplest way for us simple-minded football fans that just love football and don't understand high art auctions, Jansen.
Well, I think you hit it. The fun begins and ends with the draft because what happens after is a bunch of teams that really don't care.
It's not teams you don't care because you still get your players that you want. You just make the problem is you get in your own head as part of this because if you're in the snake draft, you get on your head because you're looking at your ESPN sheet and you're like, man, I really want to take Keenan Allen. He's a Chicago Bear now, but they're projecting the 3rd round. Man, I can't take him in the 2nd round. This tells me I got to take it in the 2nd round. I'm gonna wait until the 3rd round. Then he's gone because you know what? Someone else wanted to take him in the 2nd round, and that's what happens. Is because really you're beholden to you. If you're beholden to what other people think as opposed to making your own list and looking at your own list, then you get in your own head instead of taking the players that you really want. The problem is that you just think that an auction draft frees your mind more because people don't understand what something should cost, when really people just need to stop listening to the pundits and the experts, other than the ones on this show, which are obviously the smartest on air. But they got to stop listening to other people's list and just take the people that they want, that they think that are going to succeed, as opposed to saying, man, I can't believe that guy went in the 2nd round. I had him as a 5th round pick. You know what? He wanted him, so that's why he took him.
All right, so I've got follow-up questions here, right? So, auction draft, do you have draft slot, like draft positions, or do you go each player down the list and everybody bids, and then it's sort of like, explain a little bit more of the dynamic,
Great question.
because
He
where
wants to
I'm
know
going
if it's a
is
live auction or a silent auction.
the auction seems like it could take 20 hours based on the way you described it. So help me
100%.
understand.
Yeah, I think that is a fear of a lot of people's how long an auction draft can take. And they do take about 2 hours. I mean, they can stretch from there if it's in person. Online's usually an hour and a half, 2 hours. So there's still positions. So just like you would be a draft, 1st round, first pick, you are that too. And every team does that. And actually the picks do snake. if you do it online. You could choose not to do it online. Like when we do it in person, actually the last place team gets the first pick, or the team that wins the consolation bracket gets the first pick, and then we just do clockwise. And so everyone kind of wants to sit next to that person, because that is half the strategy. Especially if you're one of these teams with the most dollars, and we could talk a little bit about keepers and some creative ways that you can do keepers with auction dollars and trade draft dollars, which is a whole different dynamic of fun. How you put those first 3 players usually out there is a game changer to how the whole auction goes. Because if I'm really that first person, I really want to put the person I want second or third most, because I'm hoping to get some of the other big dollars out of the game. And so, especially that first round, it kind of goes away after the first round, but that first round is highly strategic in who you put out there. In fact, you may throw a kicker out there for $1, because if I can get Justin Tucker for $1, I need him anyways. Nobody wants to bid their money up that early on in the process. That's a huge win. So there's a ton of mental games in that early rounds and how those picks are laid out, and it's highly coveted where you get to put those picks out there.
So what I'm hearing is it's not necessarily as important on your draft position, but more so on the strategy of how your money's gonna, and ideally you want all these people to get their things out of the way so you can make a deep run on some of the other players. So let me ask you this: like, what happens if I've got the number 1 draft pick, and let's just say I put Jordan Jefferson right on the block. He's my guy. I get outbid by the person in the 3rd draft slot. So when it goes to 3rd, now do I draft or is he drafting again? And it's just you go until you fill your roster slots. Is that how it
you
works?
fill your roster spots. That's exactly right. Yeah. And so, like, as you get towards the later rounds, teams will be full. Some teams may be out. And there's 2 different ways too. We don't require you to fill your roster. Some require you to fill the roster. If you only want to draft 4 players and then you want to go pick the rest of them out of free agency, that's on you. I will say this. I've mentioned it briefly, but we do have keepers in ours. We keep 5. Basically, the way that works is the points that they scored the year before. You take 10% of it, and that's what the dollar amount is. So, if you're CMAC and you score 520 points, you're $52 to keep. And that subtracts off your $300 budget, and you've got those 5 keepers. It also opens it up so that in our trades, which I think are one of the most fun things the league can do, is trades, you can actually trade draft dollars. And that's why we see upwards of 150, 180 trades a year, because even our off season has just dozens and dozens and dozens of trades. Because I may say, hey, I'm a Bears fan and I want Keenan Allen, but I can't make this 1-to-1 for Keenan Allen and Puka. Give me, I'll give you Puka, but give me Keenan plus $20. And then all of a sudden we both feel like we've made a win on this thing.
So using your $300 reference, what would the average like tier 1 player, like first round draft pick player go for? Like, we talking $100, like a third of your overall budget? Like what are you seeing?
Yeah, your highest guys are going for $100, but there's usually only 2 or 3 of those. So like this year, you're gonna have you're gonna have Justin Jefferson, you're gonna have Jamar Chase. I think Marvin Harrison's gonna push up there just because he's new and he's a rookie, and different people do different rookie ways. Your CMAX, your running backs that are up there that are guaranteed, those guys are all gonna push 100. But then you're gonna have dozens and dozens of stud players. Like let's talk about Michael Pittman Jr. You're probably gonna grab that guy for like 12 or $15. And so it offsets. I mean, it truly is a highs and lows. But people overpay for those top guys because you normally have a little bit more of a personal tie to them. Like I'm going to overpay for Justin Jefferson because I'm a Vikings fan. Bubba's going to go out there and grab Caleb Williams is going to have to sit on his bench. And he may pay $20 for him. Like when Bubba throws out Caleb Williams and he probably should go for $12, I'm going to bid 15 because I know Bubba's going to go higher. And I'm going to get some of his dollars going
because he's going to be the best quarterback in the league.
So maybe I'm going to push him to $30. So how could I get Bubba's budget going? And so again, it can go quick. It also depends. Look, we've got some that are notorious of going once, going twice, $15 and doing that. And if you do that a ton, that's where the time really comes in. If everybody throws their bids in quick, it works pretty well, but everybody likes the dramatics. You like the game of someone thinking that they've got this sold, and in the last minute, I upbid you. And then, of course, the room just erupts in laughter. So there is a lot of fun to that. But I do like auction in person more than online. But I still think that auction keeps people engaged throughout the year in a way that snake drafts just don't.
So what I'm
Mhm.
hearing though is that essentially it's more complicated, takes longer, but the one thing that you're saying that's really smart is the smartest guy is ultimately going to win. And, you know, in this
There's
case, I'm usually the
strategery.
smartest guy. That's why I think it goes back to Snake. Snake, it's all equal. Everybody's got the same opportunities. You got guys like me that are the real sharks of the matter that aren't going to take advantage of guys like y'all. So, I mean,
Because
that's why Snake is much more fair.
your random number generators never put me at a pick greater than 7. Random.
Randomly think you suck. I don't know.
So
I mean,
enough of you deep South Bubba and your terrible Southern accent, even though you're from the South, so you should have one. That's a shame to Alabama and all Alabamians anyway. Terrible accent. But
hell
Jansen
yeah,
out there
man.
in
Hell yeah.
Colorado,
Hell yeah,
Colorado.
man.
Question
Colorado.
for you, in like 20 seconds or less. How difficult is it for the group to learn and prep for this auction to implement it into a season? Because you're going to have a lot of people that have been doing this for decades and they're just set in their ways. I mean, how hard of a sell is it?
Yeah, I think it's super intimidating when people first hear about it. I'll give ESPN a lot of credit, just like they do the draft, the snake draft, where you can go in and just kind of test run ones and run with just random strangers to see how it goes. They do that for auctions usually too. Normally, if somebody goes through a first round of an auction and they've seen it kind of play out, there's no learning curve. It's just that first intimidation factor, and it's a new group of people that have never bid together, kind of understanding people's styles. And so that first year, there's definitely a transition. You can get some stills. You can see some people overpay, but you see people overreach in drafts all the time. You see them grab someone in the second round, like, what the hell were you doing? Why did you grab that person? That's a fourth rounder. So I don't think that it's any steeper of a learning curve than what a snake draft is. It's just when you insert the dollars, people are very concerned about, how do I value these individuals? How do I value these players? And the truth is, you can't until you get around with your group, because those dynamics of the group completely change the value. I have one auction group where the highest person may go for $60, where I have one where we've had players go for over $200. They will put their whole draft on a player because I want how am I going blank on it? Bijan Robinson.
Yeah,
I want,
Bijan,
so that was a year
That
that
sounds like a winning
I had a
strategy.
lot of dollars, and my
you will
brother
go with that strategy this year too.
my
Yeah.
my my brother bid me up. I think he went like 250 on Bijan because he thought I was going to keep going. And now he plays it up like he was happy he won Bijan because he gets to keep him and all that. But I know I wrecked his whole draft by stopping that bidding.
That's
So
well,
it sounds like a combination of Texas Hold'em and Storage Wars is what I'm hearing
Yes,
right now.
yes. Which, is there
so
anything better?
who are we? We've already got a final verdict on this, and the fact that JT is selling in his auction, and Southern Bubba down there, terrible Southern Bubba is pushing the snake here. So I've listened, I've entertained, and a lot of this is just coming with my pure despite with the way Bubba, our general manager of our fantasy league, runs things. And I've got
I
a
prefer fantasy czar. I
yeah,
prefer fantasy czar.
whatever you call it. The real issue is your draft randomizer with your snake draft that just continually gives people that win the league a randomized first draft pick on a keeper that was a first draft pick, and then you snake it, and then it's just the death. So JT, I'm really intrigued with this. Let's level the playing field. If you want those caliber of players, you're going to have to come to the table with some strategery and be willing to pay for that. And it evens the play. And here's what I'm loving. I'm loving it requires group participation. So I'm saying for everybody out there listening, if you want to get your league closer together, if you want to weed out those ones that just do the draft and then they don't set their lineup for the rest of the year, let's just do a little investigation on this auction thing. I think it's something worth looking into. Bubba, I'm going to need you to get the old Roberts rules and really start politicizing this to our fantasy group. We got to get the 2/3 vote approved.
Robert's Rules of Order, by the way, the only way to properly run a fantasy football league. I mean, if you don't understand Robert's Rules, it's the best way to go through it. You got to be essential about that. You got to be strategic about how you bring forward motions and everything else. I mean, come on, guys. You got to have a constitution here. And by the way, both of you idiots drafted in front of me, both the past three, like two of the three last year.
There's no way.
No, you idiots both did it. So I don't want to hear it, because if anybody gets screwed by the random generator, it's me. And yet I still make the playoffs every single
How many
year.
championships do you have? That would be 0.
I got one. I got one. Gee, how about you? I got one.
Take skill to make the playoffs, boys, and luck to go through.
Well,
Dan Marino of fantasy football. There he is.
Hey, I saw a video yesterday, Bubba, that I should have sent to you. If you watch The Boys and Homelander, it was hey, you're a fantasy GM, and it was Homelander said, "I'm stronger, I'm smarter, and I'm just better than y'all." And this is Bubba to a T.
It's a very attractive man. It's a very attractive man.
So,
all right, the verdict is in. It's very apparent. The snake draft is the best, unless you're stupid like Jansen and Graham, who obviously think the auction is the best. Regardless of what's happening, fantasy football is about the most important thing, which is getting the boys and the girls together, having a good time with your friends, and really laying it out there with a competitive spirit. So whether you choose an auction draft,
the right
whether
way,
you choose a snake draft,
the wrong way,
or whether you create your own way of doing it, the important thing is I'm smarter than everyone else, and you're stupid if you disagree with me. No, you've made good arguments, Jansen. I think I'm smart enough to take care of the auction draft, but the snake is the most fair and the most low bar to get in, so I do think that preserves it. At the end of the day, it's all about having fun and bringing home that championship belt. So, boys, I think we're going to continue this debate, and we're going to see what our league does this year. Until then, we are out.
Going once, twice, sold.